Imagine standing beside the Contentnia Creek in the year 1700. There's no highways, there's no utility lines, no tractors or bridges, no survey markers, just water, forest, swamps, and game trails, and communities that had existed there for generations. Now, imagine being a member of that community and watching unfamiliar people appear. First a few, then a dozen, maybe a few hundred, and then settlements. Settlements like Newbern, North Carolina, where the Neuse and the Trent River meet. It's a beautiful city. From the Tuscarora perspective, the landscape was changing, not gradually over centuries, but within a single lifetime. The places where people hunted changed. The places where people traveled changed. The places where people lived had changed, and their entire geography of their daily life was being altered. And the changes were not slowing down, they were accelerating. And there's something that nobody wants to talk about, and that's the slave trade. There's a part of North Carolina history that rarely gets discussed in public schools. The Indian slave trade, the Native American slave trade. Most Americans understand that Africans were enslaved, but far fewer understand that Native Americans were also captured and sold into slavery. And in the Carolinas, that trade became extremely profitable. Native men were captured, Native women were captured, and Native children were captured. Some were sold locally, others were shipped far away. Charleston, South Carolina was one of the destinations. Entire communities lived with the fear that family members could just simply disappear. And think about what that does to a society. Imagine raising children knowing that they might be kidnapped. Imagine hearing stories of a neighboring village being raided and completely wiped out. Imagine wondering whether traders arriving into your territory came to conduct business or steal from you or even take your people. Fear, distrust, it destroys. And by the early 1700s, trust between many Tuscarora communities and colonial authorities had begun to collapse. And here comes John Lawson. Today there's a marker in Grifton that reminds us of one of the most famous figures in this story, John Lawson. Lawson's remembered as an explorer, a surveyor, and a writer. Many North Carolinians know him as a man who documented the colony. But from the Tuscarora perspective, Lawson represented something larger. He represented expansion. His writings encouraged settlement, and his surveys helped map the land. His work helped to attract more colonists. The more and more successful North Carolina became, the more pressure was placed on the Tuscarora territory. Now, whether Lawson personally intended to harm is almost beside the point. What matters is how he was viewed, because perception often shapes history. And to many Tuscarora, Lawson symbolized the future he feared, a future where their homeland would no longer belong to them. And a lot of the Tuscarora thought that Lawson was actually the governor of North Carolina. The settlers in the Tuscarora were looking at the same land, but they saw two totally different things. The settlers saw an opportunity, new farms, new towns, new wealth. The Tuscarora saw loss of hunting grounds, loss of territory, and loss of control, and loss of security. Neither side fully understood the other, and neither side trusted the other. That combination's dangerous. When fear grows faster than communication, conflict always becomes inevitable. Every new settlement increased suspicion. Every disagreement increased resentment, and every rumor increased tension. Eventually, the relationship reached a breaking point. By 1711, North Carolina was a place filled with anxiety. Settlers feared attack. Tuscarora feared displacement. Both sides believed they had a legitimate grievance. I got a question. Who had a more legitimate grievance? the Europeans that were arriving or the people that were already here? It's a good question, isn't it? Both sides believed they were defending their future, and they were. And both sides increasingly believed violence was unavoidable. The pressure had been building for years, like water behind a dam. Eventually, something's got to give. And when it did, the result shocked the colony. The attacks came quickly. Settlements were struck, families fled, and communities panicked. The peaceful coexistence that existed for decades was over. The Tuscarora War had begun, and once it started, there was no way back. Now, the interesting thing about the beginning of the Tuscarora War, in a time before radios, in a time before the telegraph, in a time before any way to communicate more than a couple hundred yards, the Tuscarora were able to synchronize multiple attacks on multiple places in the colony at the same time. What began as a peaceful morning in eastern North Carolina ended with the colony burning all the way across the region. They were not a simple people. They had a serious understanding of community and government. Now, the battle at the fort wasn't the beginning of the story. It was only the end. It was the result of the story, the result of years of pressure, years of expansion, and years of fear, years of misunderstanding, years of conflict that many people could see coming out of nowhere. Even before the fort had been built, before the siege had begun and the fires had burned, the path towards Nehoka was already being laid, one decision at a time, one settlement at a time, one broken promise and one relationship at a time. In the next episode, I'm going to follow that path. We're going to travel the banks of the Neuse and the Contentnia, and we'll look at the attacks that shocked the colony. We'll examine the capture of John Lawson, and we'll watch eastern North Carolina move from tension to open war. And remember, John Lawson was captured and executed on the dirt that became my hometown. So this is something that happened on the dirt that I walked as a child and still walk as an adult. This has been Tick Bite NC, and this is the story of Fort Nehoka and the Tuscarora. Thanks for watching.